nothing to lose. You can hear a pin drop filling up the room. Shadows in the sky, running out of time.
I get the feeling that Audi isn't happy. The red mist has descended. It invented the fast estate with the RS2, but Ingolstadt is currently having its thunder stolen by Munich and the M3 Touring. So, in an effort to grab back the initiative from the beaver-toothed BMW, we have this, the new, almost identically priced RS4 Competition. It has not only muscled in on its rival's naming strategy, but it also promises better steering, a more rear-focused chassis setup, and it has cool three-way adjustable dampers developed with KW. All designed, of course, to make it more capable and presumably fun on track. But before we start talking about interesting things like sport differentials and mid-corner adjustability, we really ought to consider practicality. And when you think practicality with an estate, you think load space for food and pets. But this has exactly the same 505 litres of boot space, or 1,510 litres with the rear seats down, as a standard A4 Avant. So there's not much to say with regard to that. What we really need to talk about is ride quality, because there's no point being able to carry a wardrobe if it's always a flat pack by the end of every journey. And while the new passive dampers are very sophisticated, they are only manually adjustable, so switching between comfort and dynamic on the Drive Select system in the car has absolutely no impact on the ride quality. So, if you drive home from a track day, do you need to start fiddling around in the arches first? Now obviously I could just cruise around town like this, but to be honest the roads aren't actually that bad, even the speed bumps are fairly gentle. What we need is a real test. We need some of these. Belgian Pave is what proving grounds use to test dampers and ride quality. It just so happens there's a nice lot of it in Ronda. This should be absolute kryptonite if the dampers aren't up to it, because you've got extremely shallow sidewalls and presumably stiff sidewalls as well. But this is amazing, really. I genuinely don't think this is any worse than a normal RS4, possibly even better. These particular bucket seats are even remarkably comfortable, although sadly they aren't available in every market. Sorry UK. It's also worth saying that some markets will get competition variants of the RS5 instead of the RS4, which also seems a bit odd. Anyway, the rest of the interior, well, I miss the MMI control, but overall it's still a decent blend of buttons and touchscreen. Not the most elegant in places, but somehow still very Audi. Other things that might impact the practicality of this particular competition spec, well, we've got a louder exhaust, but as you can hear, in comfort, it's not loud at all. It's not even as though there's more NVH, it's not as though it's transmitting more road noise through to the cabin. And just in case you're thinking that I've perhaps given this, well, an easy time of it, I definitely haven't. Because this is in its full track setup. Slammed, not just with the 10mm drop, but the full 20. Wheels tucked right up in the arches. It means it's got, well, a pretty amazing stance. Kind of more aftermarket than I think anything I've ever seen fresh from a factory before. Nice place, this. It's the historic town of Ronda in southern Spain. It sits about an hour inland from the jet-set holiday destination of Marbella, and its distinguishing feature is a huge canyon that makes it look like it's been torn open like a bread roll. Over the years, it has found favour with Ernest Hemingway, Orson Welles, and plenty of car manufacturers like Audi. Anyway, back to the RS4 Competition, which we've established has the load space and ride quality you'd expect from an Avant. A lot of work was also done in development to ensure the fancy dampers would be durable through more wintry conditions than these. So it's still practical, it works around town, it still has all of its load capacity, but when you want to really enjoy driving and test the capabilities of this car, well, you don't always have a track like this at your disposal. So we need to know if it's engaging and enjoyable on a road like this. The first thing you notice, which is really impressive and enjoyable and engaging, is the steering. It's something actually you notice around town, to be honest, as well, because Audi has gone to a direct ratio, so 13:1, which is obviously sort of somewhere in the middle of their dynamic steering, and it's something that we've seen Lamborghini do with the Huracan STO and then the Technica as well, and that improved those cars so much. And it's the same here, just always knowing exactly the rate at which the nose is going to go into the corner gives you so much more confidence, I think. There's a really nice weight to this steering as well, and I think Audi does some of the best steering wheels. Not too thick, just nice to hold, and obviously this is covered in Alcantara as well, for that extra bit of tactility. Perhaps the next thing you notice are the gear shifts, because they've been quickened, but there's also, again, more to them in terms of you get a more obvious punch. I'm not sure sometimes that it's necessarily the best thing, because it can feel a bit sort of, not quite clumsy, but just not as almost impressive as those super smooth shifts that we are used to with this box. Perhaps surprisingly, peak power and torque figures from the 2.9 litre turbocharged V6 remain identical to the standard RS4, with outputs of 444 bhp and 442 pounds-foot, or 600 newton meters, the latter sustained from 2000 rpm all the way to 5000 rpm.
It's not an engine that you necessarily feel like you need to always rev out. You can just live in that sort of big mid-range. We've obviously got the new sports exhaust on this as well, those trademark oval Audi pipes at the back. Definitely adds more volume. It's not a soundtrack that's really going to make the sort of the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, but again, it has character. I love the sort of the really low register that you get, I think particularly with this exhaust.
Despite the lack of any extra muscle from the V6, Audi says the competition has shaved 0.2 of a second off the standard car's 0 to 62 mph time. Not much, but that drops it from 4.1 seconds to a more appealing 3.9 seconds. Top speed has also improved to 180 miles an hour, which is 6 miles an hour more than previously possible.
Now, although the spec sheet for this car really focuses on those dampers, there are all sorts of other little tweaks that have gone into this that all add up to just making this more than perhaps you'd initially think. So we've got the lighter wheels, which are 2 kilos lighter per corner. We've got the stiffer anti-roll bars as well, about 20% stiffer at the front and 30 at the rear. And then things like the ESP and the ABS have also been retuned. And you add all that together, and it really makes quite a difference. And what about the handling? Well, that coilover suspension is obviously, it's still, you can really feel how it just, it leans into it and it makes full use of all of its travel in a way that is, I don't know, if you're geeky about suspension, I think you'll really enjoy it.
The dampers are adjustable for both high and low speed compression and rebound, and Audi provides some suggested settings for road and track. If anything, I think these coilovers might shine even more brightly on bumpy British B roads. Out here on the smooth asphalt of Asturias, the suspension is arguably almost too good at times because the way it keeps the tyres in constant contact with the tarmac means the RS4 Competition just feels incredibly well locked down. Traction is almost unimpeachable. Helped of course by its Pirelli P0 Corsa tyres, which are bespoke to this car because not all Corsas are born equal.
So these are not as extreme as some P0 Corsas, but they've certainly got some grip on these roads. Spanish roads can be pretty slippery, but this is just remarkable. And the combination of that suspension giving a load of traction and then the grip from the rubber means that this actually isn't it's not a particularly playful car, it's just efficient.
There are just hints, whispers almost of playfulness in certain corners on the road, but to push any harder, to delve any deeper, to explore the full repertoire, it was clear we were going to require a racetrack. This is the private Ascari race resort, built 20 years ago by the Dutch owner of the now defunct Ascari cars. Its layout was designed to replicate famous corners from tracks around the world, and it's a rather fabulous place.
Something about the fact that there's no advertising, no grandstands, makes it feel, I don't know, special, more like a playground really. Fine, it hasn't got the history of other circuits, but it's a fun place. So when you do get this new RS4 Competition on track and you turn everything up to dynamic or pronounced, you put it into RS2 if you've got that set up like this car, what have you got? Well, you've got a car that instantly feels pretty at home actually. It just feels like it's moves all of a piece. Those dampers give you confidence straight away. Fairly quickly you realise that this is not a Quattro system that's super agile. You never quite know with Audi. Sometimes you get these Quattro systems like in obviously the R8 or even the RS e-tron GT, which are super agile. In fact, I remember an S4 that had, I think, one of the early sport diffs, and that was really playful. That's not this car. They've definitely still majored on grip, and through corners like this you'll notice you're working the front end. That's where your focus is in terms of the balance still. But what all those little changes have done is mean that when you do lift off mid-corner, when you do adjust it, when you use the throttle towards the exit, then it does transition much more easily. It doesn't plow on. This is not the nose-heavy, lumbering Audi understeer that people still associate, I think, sometimes with the brand. Far from it. Audi hasn't turned this into a super agile four-wheel drive car like Mitsubishi Evo, let alone something like an E63S or BMW in its rear-wheel drive mode. You can chuck it around, and if you get on the throttle nice and early, you can feel that sport diff channeling it to the outside and definitely making it more agile on all parts of the corner. What this really secure feeling rear end means is that you can, well, for a start, turn the ESC all the way off, because otherwise you can still feel it just nibbling, I think, and it gives you so much confidence to chuck it in, and even when it starts sliding you can just have faith in those rear tyres. They're not going to completely let go. Even when it does start to slide nicely, it tends to four-wheel drift through the quicker off-camber corners, or even with a bit of downhill helping it on the way. It's a car you can trust, and that's really enjoyable. It's not going to give an M3 Touring, I don't think, any sleepless nights in terms of outright lariness. Although in the wet, I can imagine it might actually be surprisingly fun, tail happy, because when you do start to get these Corsa tyres a bit hot, or even when they're just cold at the beginning of laps, they're obviously warming up pretty quickly today, but when they are at less than optimum, you do start to feel it slide around a bit more. Love it through this little section here, up over this rise, up over this curb. Touring car style. Being on track in an estate always makes me think, inevitably, of Rickard Rydell and Volvo 850s in the British Touring Car Championship. So incongruous, but so brilliant.
To borrow some Hemingway words, the competition variant of the RS4 definitely has more grace under pressure, or perhaps that should be race under pressure. Anyway, I think it looks fantastic, and although I suspect it will still be trumped dynamically by the M3 Touring, it won't be by the margin it would have been. It can hold its head high and carry its luggage with aplomb, just as any descendant of the RS2 should.